Hello everybody, welcome to episode 8 of the Midweek Month. Here is your host Robbie from robbiestalkingts.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 8 of the Midweek Malt, my weekly podcast where I discuss all things tarantula related and answer all your questions that you send in. Now that's exactly what we're doing today. Last week we had a load of great questions which I really enjoyed answering. It was an absolute blast and got some fantastic feedback from everyone that watched the podcast or listened to the podcast. So this week I got sent a whole host of questions from Leah over at Glorified Pet Rock. If you haven't heard of her YouTube channel before or her Instagram, make sure to go and check her out. She's quite new to the whole YouTube thing, but it's definitely worth checking out. So the two questions I picked, because she sent me a good 8 or 9 questions, and I am going to cover these over the next few podcasts, but one of these really stood out to me, and one of these is a question that relates to something I was going to talk about anyway in this podcast. So the first question she sent in was, what is your reaction / opinion on Tom Moran's recent podcast about enclosure snobbery? How do you feel about enclosure snobbery? Now, first up, I just want to say I did listen to the podcast. I do really love the topics and stuff that Tom Moran puts out there. You know, it's nice to see him put stuff out in a audio format that I can listen to while driving the car, and where he talks about stuff that he wouldn't necessarily make a video about. And in that podcast, Tom was talking about how in the hobby there are some people out there that will set up basic enclosures and they're more than happy with those, and there are people out there that will set up elaborate enclosures and they're happy with them, and some people look down on the people that make basic enclosures, and some people say that people making elaborate enclosures are going over the top and it's unnecessary. Now first up, my opinion is I'm neither here nor there. When it comes to tarantula enclosures, my opinion is, first and foremost, above everything, as long as it meets the tarantula's basic needs, then it's a fantastic enclosure. It doesn't matter whether it's a little Tupperware box or a nice big glass enclosure, it really doesn't matter. As long as it contains substrate, has a hide, has a water dish, you know, if it's a moisture dependent species that it's got, you know, moist substrate, it can hold it, it doesn't leak, stuff like that. If it's an arboreal enclosure, if it's tall, as long as it meets the basic care requirements, I really couldn't care. Now don't get me wrong, recently on the channel I did put out a video of making a huge bioactive enclosure for my Ferrophosa apophysis, which I absolutely love, and I am going to start leaning towards making all my enclosures bioactive, and you know, because I just personally feel that a more natural environment can only benefit the teas. Is that going over the top? Yep, you don't have to do it. Many tarantula keepers have kept these animals for years and years without doing it. So is it unnecessary? Yep, a little bit. It is unnecessary. You don't have to do it, but I enjoy setting it up. I enjoy the way they look. I enjoy just the whole aesthetic of it. Would I criticize people that don't do bioactive enclosures? Hell no. No way would I do that. So for me, enclosure snobbery is just another form of, I'm not going to use the word bullying, but idealism. And there's a huge amount of that in the hobby, that people build up these ideas that things should be done a certain way, and if it's not done that way, it's wrong. And you know, I've spoke about it in previous podcasts and had previous conversations with subscribers, people writing in, that the hobby really has no place for that. And it's becoming more and more and more prevalent as the hobby grows. So for me, enclosure snobbery is an absolute nonsense. Like I said, as long as the basic needs are met, it doesn't matter what you're using. You know, whether it's fake plastic plants, real plants, you know, whether you're using topsoil or cocoa fibre, whether it's made of plastic, acrylic, glass, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the tarantula inside is happy, healthy, and can live out its lifespan and do what it needs to do. You know, it really doesn't matter. Honestly. It's like, I don't know, I was watching a video the other day and someone had just got their first tarantula enclosure and they set it up. It was about 3 or 4 inches. It was quite a good size, and they just set it up in a Tupperware container that, you know, they went and got in a cheap shop for no money whatsoever. It was like the price was low. They got enough substrate in there. They had the water dish. They had the cork bark hide. They had plants for it to hide behind, and you know, they showed it. It was happy and whatnot. It had enough space to burrow, it could dig, it was going to be one happy tarantula. Now that's no different to someone who I've watched who gets a glass enclosure and sets it up exactly the same way. It's absolutely fine. There should be no problems. And also there's the cost aspect of it. You know, people have got to understand that not everyone in the hobby can afford big elaborate enclosures. No matter how much they would love to give it to them, they just can't. But where there's that thing where it's not absolutely necessary, it makes it accessible for those people. I mean, I've spoke about it before. Purchasing tarantulas in 2022 is expensive enough. Those prices are going up and up and up. So keeping the cost down on the enclosure of a beautiful species is not really a bad thing. Let's face it. You know, and those who want to buy big expensive enclosures, go ahead if you've got the means to do it, but it's not one of those things that should be shown like, I'm better than you because look at what I do for my spider. I'm sorry, mate, you're doing exactly the same thing for the spider that people doing lower priced enclosures are doing as well. Like I said, it's all down to the care it needs. As long as the spider's happy and healthy and lives out its full lifespan and does what it needs to do, it really doesn't matter. So I agree with Tom. I agree with everything that he said in that podcast. It was an absolutely fantastic one that he's done. There's a few on there I thought are absolutely phenomenal and do need more exposure, but I'm not going to get into that because that wasn't the question that was asked of me, quite frankly. But in this particular case, he's right. All that matters is the health and happiness of the tarantula. So if anyone out there is watching this and you felt bad about the setup you've got, or you've had people talk down to you like, oh, you could do better for your spider, you don't, ignore all that. As long as you've got those basic needs met, you're doing a fantastic job, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If, you know, the setup is one of those where the needs are not being met, then of course people do need to say, hey, I think you need to do this and that and the other, and explain why that these changes need to be made. But that's the only time there should be some sort of constructive criticism, in my opinion. Other than that, it's really not needed at all. And you know, we don't want a hobby full of people that are scared to speak up and ask questions, or you know, find out what the basic requirements are for enclosures through fear of people just talking down to them and being rude and disrespectful. You know, this is a great hobby, and there are some really amazing people in it, like some amazing people that I've met, and they don't deserve that kind of snobbery. And it works the same the other way around. If you want to keep yours in basic enclosures, and you know, Tom down the road has got an oversized enclosure that's done up to the nines and whatnot, that's his business. You know, it doesn't need you do too much for your tarantulas. That's not needed, unless the stuff that's in there is detrimental to the health of the spider. That's the only time people should pipe up and say, you're doing something a little bit wrong there, mate. You need to change this, that and the other for these reasons. So yeah, enclosure snobbery, it's out there. Does it need to be out there? No, it doesn't. And that's my take on it, to be honest. That's all I've really got to say on it. So sit and think about it. You know, it's one of those things. The next question I got was, let me just have a look. Is there a tarantula you will never keep, and why? And yes, there is. There's only one species of tarantula that I will never keep, or I can't bring myself to keep. I would like to keep it, but I just physically can't do it. And that is Birapes symiomoxigorum. Now, don't get me wrong, it's an absolutely beautiful tarantula. I know we've got a lot of captive bred specimens in the hobby now, but there's two reasons why I can't keep one. And it's going to sound hypocritical, and I'll explain why I know I'm being a hypocrite in a second. Firstly, it's brand new in the hobby. It hasn't been around that long, but the minute that species was discovered, the place where Birapes symiomoxigorum is found, the poachers went out there, they decimated the land, they've stripped the whole place of spiders. When you speak to people like the locals that live there and stuff like that, they say they don't see these tarantulas anymore. They're non-existent. All they see is poachers roaming all over the land, picking up as many as they can, shipping them home or to Europe, the UK, just to make money off them. And I think that's absolutely disgusting. Now, I know I'm being a hypocrite there, because at one point in time, every single species that we own in this hobby was poached and was shipped abroad. And, you know, I understand there's the necessity for it where the hobby's concerned. But for me, what should have happened and what I would have been okay with was if a handful of breeding pairs were taken out of the wild, bred, the captive bred slings, then sent off. Not the entire area stripped of every single tarantula. I don't know if you've seen Andrew Smith's Brachypelma documentary, where he goes off and he sees that there's this big unit where all they do is breed captive bred slings of all the Brachypelma species in Mexico, and then they export them out to different countries and whatnot for private sales for the hobby. The same thing should have been done with Birapes symiomoxigorum. And because it's so recent, and the damage that has been done to the habitat and the community that live around that area and the disruption, I cannot bring myself to pick one of these slings up. Also, there's the huge price tag on them. At the minute, I've seen them for about £80 for a sling, and for me, I'm like, you know, given what I've just said, given the price tag, if I go and buy one, even though it is captive bred, I'm saying in essence that everything that I'm against was actually okay because I've got one now. So that is a species that I would never ever keep at the moment. Maybe in a few years down the line, once, you know, they've been bred and bred and bred and the prices come down and I can get round that moral dilemma, which I don't think I will be, then maybe, just maybe, I will end up picking one up. But for now, that is the one species I will never own. Anything else, I don't care. I would own it, I would pick it up. There's not a species that I'm afraid of, or I don't like the look of, or I don't feel capable of owning. I'll pick any species up. I'm not biased. I don't care if they're New World or Old World, arboreal, fossorial, terrestrial. That I love tarantulas in general, like just all of them. Even if people say they're a brown boring spider, I think they're the most fascinating thing in the world. So for me, I would pick them all up like Pokemon. There's not one that I would say no to. But yeah, as for one I will never own, and why? Birapes simiomoxigorum. The next question, well, I hope that answered that for you. The next question that we got from Leah would be Tom Moran did a podcast on mixing tarantulas. It's another Tom Moran question. In breeding, she means hybridization, different species, etc. Your opinion. Again, this is a podcast I listen to and I absolutely agree with Tom 100%. Now I understand there are, like Tom said, there are people out there in the hobby that come from animal keeping backgrounds where it is the norm to breed two different species and make a hybrid, i.e., you know, reptile dealers, snake breeders. There's even, like, you know, big cats. You see the ligers and the, is it tigons that are out there? But it is deemed the norm. The problem with hybridization in the tarantula hobby is the fact that there's a few problems. Firstly, the animals that are out in the wild are becoming dangerously close to extinction. Like, there's species out there that are so close to no longer being on the planet that in theory the hobby and the amount of breeders we have and whatnot, we should be able to repopulate them. We should be able to have thousands of egg sacs and just get them and take them out. But the problem is, due to hybridization, what you would be putting out into the hobby is not the original of what's already there. So once you put them out there, you're not putting the species back into the wild. You're putting a hybridized version of it. So that's the reason why we can't breed these animals, is because the bloodlines and the genetics, they're all polluted and they actually don't know what would be going out there. Secondly, morally, like, I don't believe that you should, you know, create an animal out of two different species. Like, they may be the same genus, but, you know, there's a reason why these animals have very strict territories. They are divided by rivers. They are found in different forests. It's to stop crossbreeding. It is to keep their species, genetically. The chance, even though I'm sure, there are failures, and in the wild it can happen, and probably has happened, the chances are it doesn't. Probably not that often. And, we'll never, ever discover it. Now, it must have happened somewhere along the line for there to be so many different species, etc., etc. But, they don't do it for a reason. Like, it's just not worth it. And then a third on top of that, like, if you're keeping these hybridized tarantulas, you can't then breed a hybridized one with something else and get a mix and a mash, because then every species that we've got in our collections would disappear. We would then have all these hybridized animals that are not where we started, and who wants that? That's why people in the hobby, they don't want to buy hybrids. They don't want to pollute gene pools. They don't want to, end up with a mishmash of this and that and the other. For an individual keeper, they may think that's kind of cool, but if you've got 200 slings, 300, 400, even up to 1,000, like, imagine if you hybridize like Lacidora parahybana, which when they have egg sacs, they have thousands of eggs, not hundreds, thousands of eggs. Imagine being stuck with that. Your whole collection is just these hybridized animals that you can't sell, you can't get rid of, no one wants. And that takes a lot of care and a lot of time, let me tell you that, from having a large collection myself. Now, also, there's the disappointment of getting a hybridized animal. For example, Tom Moran talks about his Brachypelma bomi, which is a hybrid. Now, unfortunately, I found out with a recent mole that I've got a female Brachypelma baumgarteni, which is looking, from what I've seen online from some posts from some breeders, looks to be a hybrid. So now I haven't got a Brachypelma baumgarteni, I've got a Brachypelma Frankenstein that I can't ever pair, I can't ever breed, I can't ever do anything with other than take care of it throughout its lifespan. And that will be the first and last and only time I'll ever have whatever it is. Is that worth it? Yeah, I can say, oh, I've had one of them, I've looked after, I've had cared for one of them, but that's pretty much it. Like, apart from something pretty to look at, it's really not worth it. Like, from a breeder's point of view, a keeper's point of view, nah. Hybrids, nah. Keep them out of the hobby. And if anyone's thinking about hybridizing, please reconsider it. Don't do it. It's really not worth it. You're going to have more problems than you want. Honestly, it's really not worth it. We don't need hybrids in the hobby, and we don't need this idea that, it would be okay. So I agree with everything Tom said in his podcast. It's really, really not worth the aggravation. I don't want it, you don't want it. So the last question, which is something I was going to cover anyway on this podcast, is, are you going to any shows this year? And the answer to that question is 100% yes. This Sunday, I will be attending with Annie's Arachnids, the awesome Annie's Arachnids. If you haven't checked out her channel yet, make sure to go and check it out. She's brand new. She's only got 4 videos out at the minute, but they're all awesome. She's still learning, but she's producing great content, so definitely check her out. We will be at the Southeast Arachnid Show down in Kent, which I can't wait to go to. Like, we went to a couple of shows before Christmas. We went to the Bristol show and we went to the Brighton show. We love going to the shows. I love meeting subscribers, breeders, the events organisers. You know, the atmosphere at these things is just amazing. And I love talking to subscribers to the channel. I love seeing what you picked up. I love seeing what you're looking for. It's just a great family day out. You know, the kids enjoy it when Bugfest is there. It's just great. So yes, I will be at the Southeast Arachnid show. I will 100% be attending the BTS show this year. It will be my first one. I was supposed to go to the BTS show before the lockdown hit, which subsequently got cancelled, and I have been waiting for the BTS show since then. And the past couple of years, every time the time comes around, is the show going to happen? Is BTS going to happen? Maybe. Sorry, it's not going to happen. And every year has been disappointment. So this year, when we found out the BTS show is going ahead, first thing I said is we are going to the BTS. So those are 2 confirmed shows we'll be going to. Hopefully we'll be able to go to the Bristol show again when that pops up, and the next Brighton show. So yeah, we've got lots of shows planned that we will be going to. And if any of you see me there and you want to have a little chat or ask me anything, or you know, just show me what you got, feel free just to walk up and say, hey, how you doing? Like, even if you want a photograph or something like that with me, feel free. I'm always happy to meet you guys and do that kind of thing. So definitely come and do it. Don't be shy. I've seen before in shows, there's been people that have been like, oh look, there's Robbie, and they've shied away and, you know, not come up and spoke to me. I'm not gonna bite you. I'm not gonna eat you. So come and say hello, because I don't know if you want to talk to me or not. And like me just walking up to random people and going, hey, like, do you know who I am? That's kind of creepy. So I'm not going to do that. So definitely come and say hello. It would be nice to meet you. It'd be nice to, like, you know, share some fun stories, see how your experience of the event is going to be or has been. And yeah, just generally enjoying it. I'm also looking forward to seeing Andrew Smith again, the guys at the Spider Shop, Andy at So Many Legs, Emil at Spider Planet, just all the sellers. I can't wait to see him again. It's gonna be a great day. Sorry, there's a little pause there because my camera actually switched itself off, but I'm gonna continue this for a little bit longer. Last thing I want to say before I end this podcast is thanks to everyone that subscribed recently. We are getting closer to the 2,000 subscriber giveaway. If you don't know about it yet, at 2,000 subscribers, I'll be giving one of you the chance to win a T Celadonia and also a T Apophysis. If that's something you're interested in, then be subscribed to the channel. Go over and watch my Grammastola Rosea video and just write T Celadonia in the comments and you'll be entered. Also, we are this close to the channel getting monetized, so thank you to everyone who's put in the work and the hours and the time. We've almost reached that 4,000 hours we need to get monetized, so thank you. Like I've discussed before, there's a reason why I want to get monetized, but I'll talk about that in another podcast. So this is the end. I'm going to say thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my answers. I hope it gives you food for thought. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.